Hello, and welcome to the pcAmerica Reseller Training Series. My name is Adam Moore, and I am the sales engineer that will be conducting today's training. Today we're going to be discussing how to manage your employees. Let's get started. When you first click on the software, this brings you into your login screen. At the top of the login screen, we have Manager, Help, and Exit. Manager allows you to make any kind of back office changes or any adjustments that need to be made in the software. Help has all of our FAQ knowledge, so if you're struggling with any aspect of our software, you can refer to the Help menu. Exit allows you to exit out of the software. Manager. When you hit Manager, you're prompted for a password. The password that you're prompted for is admin on the top and 01 at the bottom. Now that is your defaulted ID. It is recommended that you change that password once you become more familiarized with the software. So we're going to enter our password in admin, A-D-M-I-N on the top, and our ID at the bottom, 01. This will bring us into our manager screen. We're now going to click on number 5, Administrative, and then letter F, Employee Maintenance. Now this is going to be the screen where you add all of your employees into the system. We have the top section, which is the general information, which is required for an employee. The middle section, which is their functionalities, where you can limit the employee of what they can do and what they can't do in the software. The left section here gives you ways that you can navigate through your employees. If you hit this drop down arrow, it also shows you all of the employees you have added into the system. To the right of that, we have options to add the employee in, create job codes, view our time clocks that are for our employees that are clocked into the system, and again we also have our help button here, which has all of our FAQ knowledge. The duplicate button here allows you to duplicate an employee once you're comfortable with the changes that you made for that employee. This way you don't have to go through all the functionalities all over again for each employee. For the employee ID, you're allowed up to 4 characters. In front of the employee ID, you'll notice that it has either a 1001 in front of it or some kind of prefix. Now this prefix lets you know if you're activated to the web portal, maybe you have more than one location. That is what this prefix means. In most cases, it's usually going to read 1001, 01, 1001, 02, 1001, 03, and so on. But in this case, because I'm activated to the portal, my prefix is Rob Test, and my ID is 201. And like I said, you're allowed up to 4 characters, but I only used 3 here. For the password, you can make this any unique password that you want, maybe the last 4 digits of their social. Display name, anything that you want to call them in the software, whatever name is easier for you. Maybe you have a nickname or any kind of name that you want to display, you can enter that in here as well. Card swipe IDs, we have the ability to assign access cards to our employees. Again, this is a method of clocking into the system, and if you're interested in access cards, you can contact your account manager. The other method of clocking in is using the touchscreen, and they would just sign in with the ID that you assign with the password you have assigned with them. Below that, we have customer. You have the ability to make the employee a customer so they can purchase products from your establishment. Hourly wage is pretty self-explanatory. It allows you to set their hourly wage if you're tracking that in the system. Below that, we have a couple checkboxes. We have disable this employee, require clock in before login, take credit card tips and cash at the end of shift, administrative card access. Now, disable this employee is meant for employees that are no longer working in your establishment. Maybe they were fired or let go. Whatever the situation is, you do not have the ability to delete that employee, but you can disable that employee if they've ever sold anything in your establishment. If you've accidentally added an employee into the system and they never sold anything, then yes, you can delete them out of the system. But if they have sold previous sales or sold anything in your system, you are not allowed to delete them out. You can only disable them. Require clock in before login, very nice feature. I say that only because this requires you to clock into the system before you can ring any sales. This way you avoid at the end of the month or the end of the week, any discrepancies, why they weren't paid for a certain hour or why they weren't paid for a certain day. If there's no sales recorded under their ID, then they were never clocked into the system, and that is why they were not paid for that day or hour. Take credit card tips in cash at the end of the shift. We have the ability to track credit card tips per employee in the system, so you can nail that option as well. Administrative card access. As I mentioned, if you assign an access card to an employee, you have the ability to then mark that card with administrative card access. Below these checkboxes here, we have permission, personal info, job codes and wages, store association, and payroll. Permissions allows you to set what they can do and what they can't do in the system. Under functionality, you have over 3 pages that you would have to view. Now, to give you a breakdown on how these functionalities work, if you hit this drop-down arrow, you have 4 options. You have yes, no, prompt, and override. Yes means that they can do the privilege. No means they cannot do the privilege. Prompt means that a manager must come over and put in their password so they can do the privilege. And override basically gives them manager override throughout the software. And again, you have pages 1, 2, and 3 just for their functionalities. If you wanted to lock them out of inventory, going into customer maintenance, viewing your reports, going into your setup screen, or locking them out from restaurant features altogether, you can set all of these features to no, or all of these functionalities to no. Now, a really neat feature about the functionality is that we have the ability to track these functionalities, even if you decide to give them the privilege in the software. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit my drop-down arrow, because as I mentioned, this is how we can sort through our employees in the system. So when I hit the drop-down button, I'm going to select Adam. So as you can see here, I've set these functionalities up, but I've only set a couple of them, only ones that I want enabled. Now, this is why it's important that you go through these functionalities, because once you add the employee into the system, everything is set to prompt. So as you can see, we have invoice price changes. I have that set to prompt. Allow exit, I have that set to yes, because if they need to exit out of the invoice screen for any reason, they can do so. End transactions such as cash, credit card, any kind of transactions, you want to make sure they're set to yes, or else they will not be able to close out a sale. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, what's very neat about the functionalities is that we have the ability to track each functionality here, even if you decide to give them the ability to do so. So let's say I set this to yes. Okay, and like I said, this is a very iffy privilege. So most managers are very cautious about giving this functionality to their employees, opening the cash drawer. I mean, I know I would be. I wouldn't want my employees opening my cash drawer anytime they want. So what I can do is hit log as exception. And what it's going to do every time this employee opens the cash drawer, it's going to throw this into a report called operational exceptions. So every time the cash drawer is open, it'll track their ID, their display name, and the time that they opened the cash drawer. Now, if you keep looking at the screen, you'll notice if I highlight another functionality, the check mark disappears. But if I highlight open cash drawer again, check mark reappears, meaning that I'm tracking that privilege or functionality. And you can do that for any of these functionalities here. You can track any ones that you want. You have to make sure that you highlight it first and then put a check mark in the box. So as you can see, I'm now tracking open cash drawer, hold and print. And if I go to sell non-inventory, check mark disappears because I'm not tracking that functionality. Personal info. Personal info, if you have any additional information on your employee, you have the ability to store that information as well. Job codes and wages. I like to use job codes and wages as their entitlement of what they do in the location. Maybe you can have a cashier. Maybe you can have someone that's doing stock. Maybe you have someone that's a server. Maybe you have someone that's working in the kitchen. Okay, those are examples of different job codes that you can create in the system, and then assign them to the employee so you know exactly what position and what job code they're working. To create the job codes, that's done in job code setup. A little later on, we're going to cover that. Store association. This is if you have more than one location. You have the ability to set your employees so they can work at more than one location that you own. This is a setting that will have to be done in the web portal. The web portal is basically allows you to communicate all of your locations to a secured website where it's pulling information every 30 minutes, pulling and sending information every 30 minutes so all your locations are communicating properly. And you can see all those informations. Payroll Info. We now have the ability to export our payroll information to Payroll City, which makes payroll a lot more easier for the end user. So as I mentioned with job codes and wages, to create these different job codes, that's done in job code setup. So we're going to click on job code setup at the bottom of the screen here and show you how this works. So in here, we have a couple of job codes. When you hit this drop down, it shows you all the job codes you have added into the system. So we have cashier enabled, all right, or set in the software. And as you can see, we have access to point of sale or access to POS. This allows the employee to actually get into the cash drawer, ring sales, and finalize sales. If this option is unchecked, then they are unable to go past a login screen. They can only utilize the software for clocking in purposes, so the person in charge can only track their hours and wages. Now, if I hit the drop down arrow again, and if I select cook or chef, you'll notice what I mean by that. So as you can see, for cook, I have access to POS unchecked, meaning that I don't want anybody that's working in my kitchen to be able to go into my cash drawer whenever they want, or to ring a sale. They're completely locked out altogether. So again, cashier, someone that's going to be ringing sales and finalizing sales, sending orders, you want to make sure that this option is enabled, access to POS. But if you have an employee that's just utilizing the software just for clocking purposes, and you want to just track their hours, then you can do so by unchecking this option here. Now, as you can see with cashier, I have shift report set to 1. I also have include department totals, itemize credit card transactions. Meaning, when this cashier or employee clocks out of the system, it's going to print out a report automatically, and it will include department totals and itemize the credit card transaction they've done for the day. But in order for this report to print, you must make sure the number of copies is set to 1. You also have the ability to set default wage, default overtime wage. So to associate the job code with an employee, we're going to exit out of here, and we're going to go to job codes and wages, which is already open. So let's remove one, all right, and let's add the job code to the employee. So we'll hit add, and we'll select a couple here. So we'll do cashier, all right, hourly wage. You don't have to enter that if you don't want to. You can leave that at 0 if you're not tracking it. But if you are tracking for their hours and wages, then you want to make sure that you do have that entered in there. And we'll add one more just to show you what it looks like when they clock in. We'll do cook. So I just want to show you how it locks them out. Because for cashier, we have the ability to go past the login screen, but if we log in as a cook, we should not be able to get past the login screen. So let's clock into the software right now with this employee. I'm going to change the password to 03 so I know exactly how to get into this, how to get in. 03, and I make sure the login ID is 03 as well. So I'm going to hit Save Changes, and now there's 2 places where you can go to clock into the software. That's under Cashier, letter C, clock in and clock out, or on the login screen on the lower right. This little blue and white time clock here. This allows you to clock in and clock out of the software. So if I hit clock in, all right, let's log in with 03, enter, 03, enter, and we're going to say clock in. And we're going to clock in as cashier. Clocking successful, hit done. So now when I log in, I should be able to log in with this employee. All right, and that brings me directly in. So now let's go clock out that employee and clock in as a cook now. So if we're going to exit out of here, all right, we're going to just hit this button here, the time clock button. We're going to put 03, enter, 03, enter, and now we're going to clock out. Right, and because we have the shift report enabled, it's telling me that it's printing a document to my printer. So now let's clock back in with this employee, but this time we're going to clock in as a cook. When I clock in, I should be able to not go any further than the login screen. So again, 03, enter, 03, enter. Clock in, and this time I'm going to work as a cook. I'm now going to hit done. So now if I try to log in, it should not let me further than the login screen. 03, enter, 03, enter. And there you go. So it tells you that I can't go further than the login screen because I do not want this person that's working as a cook to ring sales or go into my cash drawer whenever they want. So this is just an extra form of security. Let's just clock out with that employee again, 03. And now clock out. Hit done. And there we go. Now we're clocked out. Now we didn't have a shift report assigned on that job code, so that's why I just closed out right away and didn't give me any prompts afterward. So now let's just go back into our manager screen, and again our password is admin, ADMIN, enter, and our ID is 01. And we're going to go back into our employee maintenance screen. So now let's hit number 5, administrative, letter F, employee maintenance. So take a look at what we just did, and we're going to go to time clock management to show you the clock-ins that we just worked. So time clock management, and there we are. It shows us that the different job codes that we worked. So it shows that we worked cook, and it shows that we also worked cashier today. Now what's really neat about this screen here is that you have the ability to go back and change the time to whatever you want. Now only a manager can make this change, but in order for this to work, the employee must be completely clocked out of the system to go back and adjust the time to whatever you want. So let's say I want to give this some time. So let's say I want to show that it worked more than a minute. You can go back, literally click in the field and put in whatever we want there. It'll show you that now I'm working 42 minutes, and the change has committed as well because I clicked out of the field. And if I also had my wages set, it would show you how much I've made so far. And again, you also have the ability to export your payroll information to Payroll City. This is a screen where you set up your payroll export settings. You can also reprint shift report if you needed to, and you could also change job code for that employee as well. So now that we've covered the functionality of the employee maintenance screen, let's schedule an employee to work in our system. That is done in your label scheduler. So we're going to hit exit, and we're going to go to number 3, tools. And we're going to click on letter B, labor scheduler. Now to use the labor scheduler is very simple. Now one weird feature on the screen is the search button. In order to save your changes, you have to hit search. Very strange, I know, but that is going to be fixed in the next release. Just to give you guys a heads up. But very strange that you have to hit the search to commit your changes. But to use this screen is very simple and very beneficial. You can create schedules for the month and then duplicate that schedule for that month and use it for the next month. So this way you don't have to create multiple schedules. Now to schedule an employee, very simple. We have the ability to filter through all the job codes that we have set in the software, or we can view all. So to schedule an employee, very easy. We're going to click on the employee, and we're going to click on their starting point of when we want them to come in. So let's say 5 o'clock. Okay. And let's say I want them working till 2. Shows you, that's all I did. I literally clicked on the starting point and dragged it to the end point. And it shows you that I'm working 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, what another neat feature is if you highlight the time that you've given that employee, you also have the ability to set a break in that given time that you have set here. So now I created a schedule for the 26th. Let's do one for the 27th. And I'll hit search so my change can commit. So again, let's say I want to do one for the 27th now. Again, I'll highlight the employee, start at 5, and drag it to 2. I hit search to save my change. And now when I click on 26, it shows that I'm working 5 to 2, and also on the 27th, I'm working 5 to 2. You also have the ability to print the schedule. If you want to hang the schedule anywhere or display it anywhere, you can do so. As I mentioned, you have the ability to copy these schedules for the next month. This way you don't have to redo the schedule. Now, to enable the label scheduler so your employee can only work these hours that you've assigned from 5 to 2, and you don't want them maybe clocking in at 4:55 or maybe 2:05, once you enable the label scheduler, that's all they can do. They can only clock in at the time that they're assigned. To enforce the label scheduler, we're going to exit out of here, and we're going to go into setup number 4, letter G, setup screen, and we're going to go to system access. Once we get in system access, we're then going to click on labor schedule settings. Enforce label scheduler. So once you enforce label scheduler, this means that they cannot clock in any time or after than the time they're assigned. All right. If you use punctuality, you allow them, or you can give them a window, maybe a 5-minute window or a 10-minute window, where they can clock in or after the time that they're assigned. And this is where you would set that up. So now that we've covered the functionality of the employee maintenance screen, and now we know how to enforce the label scheduler once we have an employee assigned in the system, let's now take a look at reporting to show you what these clock-ins look like that we've done for the day. So we're going to click on number 5, administrative, and letter L, reporting. We're now going to click on employee. an employee, you have just reports that are based on just your employees for managing. We have hours and wages, which is a pretty detailed report. Go back and set this back so we get a little bit of time here. Let's hit display now. We hit display. It's going to show us some information here. Pretty detailed report. And you also have the ability to export this report if you need to for any reason. Maybe you have a third-party accounting software. Whatever the situation is, you do have the ability to export this to multiple extensions. Server tips. If you're a restaurant, we have the ability to track the server tips, as I mentioned while we were covering the employee maintenance screen. If you're a hair salon or an establishment that does commissions, you have the ability to track those commissions as well. Hours and wages summary, pretty self-explanatory. You also have the hours and wages full report. Employee listing. If you're tracking your employees in the system, you can pull up a list of all the employees that have been added in here. Any cash pickups that were done by employees, if you allow them that functionality, you can do so. Now, two other reports I want to bring to your attention. As I mentioned, that you have the ability to track their functionalities even if you decide to give them the ability to do that functionality. Now, what I meant by that was your operational exceptions report and your invoice exceptions report. Now, an example of an operational exception would be going into the cash drawer, okay? Maybe going into reporting, okay? That's considered an operational exceptions. So if you lock them out of all those functionalities, but you're still tracking it, or you did give them the ability to do that functionality and you're still tracking it, this is where the employee would show up to show you, who did that functionality that you're tracking. Invoice exceptions would be a delete or a line discount or any kind of invoice discount that you've done. That's considered an exception for an invoice. So that is where that will display. And again, if you highlight the report, it gives you a brief description of what the report details. Labor cost percentage, if you're using the label scheduler, you have the ability to track that cost percentage as long as you have all your parameters set properly. Last thing I want to cover on this training is backing up the database. Very important. Can't stress that enough. And you have the ability to give this functionality to your employee. I say make it an everyday process. So if you're comfortable with giving one of your employees the ability to make a backup, please do so. It's very simple. There's no reason why their backup should not be made. All right. Now, I also recommend making a backup either to an external hard drive, any kind of offsite location, such as Carbonite or something like that, or even a regular flash drive. That'll work. So we're going to hit File. We're going to select Database Maintenance. We're now going to select Backup Database. We're going to enter our password in here, which is admin on the top and 01 at the bottom. Now, it is strongly recommended to make a credit card settlement before backing up the database. Have you settled your credit card transactions? Well, we could say yes because we actually didn't run any credit cards today, so I'm just going to hit yes to that. If you hit no, it's going to make you run a credit card settlement before you can make that backup. So I'm just going to hit yes so we can override it. And now it's prompting me where I would like to save that backup. I'm going to save my desktop. Because I don't have a flash drive or an external connected, I can save it to my desktop, then later on put it on that external or flash drive, just drag it on there. So I'll call the backup today's date, 6/26/2013. I'll also put the time of when that backup was made because I know exactly what time it was made because I like to make multiple backups throughout the day. So I'm gonna put the timestamp in here as well, 1:53 p.m. Select my desktop and now hit save. It's going to take a couple seconds, and there it is. My database is now backed up. Very important. Please make sure that the end user is fully aware of how to back up their database. Can't stress enough how important that is. This now concludes our training on managing your employees. Have a great day.